So on my other videos, I talked about some of the economic problems in the country and some ideas and thoughts about how you could fix them. This is some thoughts related to that, but not the same. This video I'm going into the idea of where some of the problems in the country started. Although, just a side note, in the previous video I mentioned that to hold the banking and Federal Reserve section of the country and the government in check, the government could partner with mining companies to do like mining certificates and trade with them. I accidentally forgot to include the explanation on that thought in the last video, that because the government owns and controls all this land using the BLM and other entities, the government already has all this land and they can use that as a chip to work with them. See? Gives them a chance to partner and, they can say that they could provide the land for these companies to develop, but as a bargaining chip, flow comes back to them. See? And they can do that where it would let the mining companies start with less money to give them a break, but at the same time, there's a little bit of a hold on them so that they don't get too powerful, like these ROBBERBARONS groups. See? Anyway, that's a different thought. But see, that's part of how this can be worked out. And this idea that you could create worker stock with the government partnering with these companies be very easy to do. Government can offer and hold, land and services to companies also as a bargaining chip to work with them on this idea of how you implement a worker stock, which could be used to save Social Security and these other things. The other thing they need to do, and that they should do, is they need to change the way how they do bankruptcies in this country. The bankruptcy code was created to prevent people from going to debtor's prison. In Europe, and especially Britain, before bankruptcy was created, people, if you had debts or if they seized your debts or if you became insolvent, they would have you arrested and you'd go to debtor's prison. And debtor's prison was like they'd lock you in the Tower of London and you starved to death. And they didn't feed the prisoners in there. If your family would have to trek to that prison and bring you some food, and somehow you'd have to have that not stolen by the guards and not die of dysentery, and make that food last. Where they didn't have transportation that was well developed, they'd probably only be able to see you and bring you food once a week. And because you're not working on the family farm, they'd have less food. You see how that works? A lot of people died from debtor's prison and the Tower of London. And what's happened in the U.S., these greedy lawyers and the judges, they've corrupted the bankruptcy code. And they've corrupted so that only they can gain from it. And so you can't gain anything from. There's so many cons and limitations and rules they've piled on over the years to bankruptcy code that it can't actually do very much to help people. Okay? It defeats the whole point of it. And I used to work with people who did bankruptcy stuff for people. And I even did some of the work in it also by helping prepare the paperwork and stuff like that. and that's how I found out that they'd corrupted this so much that there's no gain. Their courts were meant to be a means of freeing the oppressed and those that were innocent from severe life difficulties. And they don't do that now. In fact, they oppress people further, and they drag out the oppression and the deaths. And this is a danger to the country to have all this done, because what happens is you can reach a point where the yearly damage accumulating in a country is growing so big that it's bigger than the country's ability to fix with all of their resources pooled. That is the trap we're in right now. Even though Trump won the election, it's a massive mountain to climb, because the amount of damage economically just from all the people going bankrupt and losing everything and losing their business and losing their jobs just from this year's accumulation is bigger than the ability of everyone to fix. And a lot of people are not interested in fixing it because people figured out that they could get rich and increase their already richness by finding failing businesses, failing mortgages, failing properties, and coming in and trying to buy it on the steal for pennies on the dollar. This is the model that was developed in at the fall of the Soviet Union by certain ROBBERBARONS people. Okay? They would rather see you fail so they can try and steal your house or your business. Okay, that's a problem. And that's why if they were to fix it, it would be better to have all of the failed properties in a country. Okay, let's say there's a state you live in, and let's say there's a list of properties every year that people lost from bankruptcy and failed business. Okay, it would be better for that to go to in like a government pool, and they could decide we could turn some of this back to the public to be sold, but we could make sure it's done fairly and not only go to the rich people. And we could also have some of it be used for veterans housing, converted into veterans housing, and have, because the government could seize it. See, if it's already gone, and um, some of it could be put back, and used in other ways. The point is, they could make it more fair, so that not only the 1% elite are gaining from this. Now, the object isn't to eliminate the 1% elite, but they have too much power. Right now, they have too much power. So they could use that as a way of uh, both helping the poor classes as well as veterans. Most people agree that that we aren't really helping the veterans very much, and there's people who are in the poor class who are either disabled or other means that didn't cause it through bad habits that need attention also. And see, when you have a property that's already distressed go into foreclosure or bankruptcy, it's already a loss anyway. You could just have the government. You need honest people, though, in the government. That's the problem. Anyway, these are some of the things they could do. Bringing back to this thought, uh, how we got into this mess. A lot of this started because of the temptation of kings and the temptation of kingmen and wanting to be these mighty elitists. Okay, this started really on early in the country. Okay, Alexander Hamilton was one of the founding fathers. He wanted America to have a king, and he wanted to be that king. if he would have had his way, it would have been just like Europe. People argue that he did some good, but he infected the country also, and it implanted this idea that some people could live um, an elite life, living off the back of others early on, very early on. And now, to give you an idea how bad this is, okay, when people started coming over from Europe to the US, a lot of them in the 1800s and other periods, they were working in factories in Europe, factories in Britain, factories in Europe, and a lot of them were working up to 16 hours a day, 6 days a week. Now, if you think about it, how would somebody even live? You can't live like that. It would shorten your life. You would not really have a family life of any kind. You'd have family, but your kids wouldn't even have a childhood because they'd be helping you to hold things together, and they'd be doing the chores at home to help both spouses work in the factories, 14 to 16-hour weeks. Some places quoted as low as 12 hours a day. Sorry, 12 to 16 hours a day. Now, all this is interesting and relevant is it's starting to go back to this. Okay, people don't see it because it's split among several jobs. To make that rent, to make the payment on your house or whatever, or even just to rent, you've got to have 2, 3, 4 jobs now. So some of them will be part-time jobs, and some will be maybe one of them will be full-time. But people in New York and in California already know about this, and they'll tell you how people would have 3, 4 jobs just to make ends meet. They're not even gaining anything. Okay, they're just breaking even. And they might take them 10 years working like that just to save for a house down payment, just for the down payment. And then once they buy that dream house, now they're locked into it and they're never home, and then their family life suffers. If you compare this, it's moving back to the same way things used to be. And this has to do with the idea that uh, currency subversion from foreign influence is bringing other influence into the economy now, and it's making us lose our strength and our power, because what creates your strength and your power? Your family life does. Well, if you're not home with your family, you're not bettering yourself, you're not learning, you're just kind of grinding at the wheel, see? And now some people have pointed out, well, with the economy going bad, they could just let things go because they don't have enough power to go after everyone, right? Well, they don't have enough. There'd be too many people losing their shirt and their house, so they couldn't take all of them. The problem is, okay, you've got the foreign influence coming in. So at a certain point, too much of the local population is losing everything, but they're still going to go after and take everything because the foreign influence and the foreign money's coming in, and it's taking the place of the local and domestic population, and replacing those people's losses. See, that's why it doesn't work. It's not a natural correction. And to actually have it naturally correct, you need to separate us from the foreign markets at some point. To do that, there's not a way of doing it without a lot of pain. Because I mean, our market's tied to the foreign markets and the foreign banks. They're joined at the hip so much. So you couldn't really separate them without a lot of without really failing the economy hard. But at some point, the U.S. market, for it to get fixed, we have to retain our independence. And you can't do that as long as the foreign money is coming in. Because the foreign money, okay, it's buying up things. It's not for free. It's absorbing our assets. And as it absorbs the losses in various economic problems and hiccups, it makes us more like them. That's taking away our power, see? So even if the election is won, there's still so many things to fix. And that's going to be a problem. And one of the problems is that the Federal Reserve has been acting antagonistic instead of cooperative. That's how it perceives. I'm not saying it is, it's how it's perceived. Well, why is it doing it? It's doing it because most of the money coming in is from that's doing anything is from foreign groups. It's going to decide where the flow is. The flow is from foreign money. That's that's why they can't really go against you know if you're measuring the flow of a river, you don't decide you're going to stop the river because that's how your business is coming in, is the flow of the river. River of water is very much like the flow of money in some ways. Now, here's one of the big problems. Whenever people talk about the economy and if it's inflation and how to curb inflation and how to keep things healthy, the only tool they'll talk about is hitting the brakes on interest rates. Either they talk about adjusting the interest rate. That doesn't work. And I'm going to explain it to you very carefully so that it'll make sense. If you raise the interest rate, the idea is it becomes more expensive for people to borrow money. And therefore, they won't do it as much. They'll slow down, right? That's how they think it works. Well, here's the problem with this. Who has money? Okay, thinking about it, the common people don't have money anymore. They don't have anything to spend. They have to be very careful in their spending. So who's left that has money to spend? That would be the elite class and the corporations. Okay, not the common people. This is why hiking interest rates or breaking them, it doesn't work anymore. It's like the brakes on the car have gone out because the middle class has been eaten by the wealthy, and the poor people don't have anything to spend. They are in survival mode. So anything they are going to spend on is only essentials, unless they're delusional, which can happen too. But this is why raising the interest rates doesn't work anymore. And these people who are in these high up positions, they failed to recognize that. Okay, if the brakes on your car don't work and you tap on the brakes and you're trying to slow down, it's not going to work. Okay, for interest rates to be able to affect the economy, you have to be able to participate in the economy. Right now, the economy is in survival mode and it's not doing very well. Especially certain states are worse than others. Areas with high population, metro areas, and blue states are in trouble. States where there's a lot of self-sufficiency that didn't get built up with all these booms where people had to struggle, they're actually doing a little better than they should. Like, because people didn't use debt as much. We need to get away from a debt economy in order to fix the country. Because when you have a debt economy, what is a debt? Debt is a form of predatorism when you have a debt economy. Okay, that's why things need to be changed to drastically. To do that, you'd have to. Okay, when you think about it, you've got to figure out what it would take to fix that, and it's become when you can fix it. But it would take some serious changes, and you start to see how big the mountain is that you'd have to climb to do this, because it's to fix it, it's almost not possible without society and whole civilizational change. See, one of the ideas I'm trying to help you to see, though, is that people have to do something now, because what happens is when poverty increases too much and it goes past a certain point, these people become so desperate that it becomes lawless. That's why you're having all these problems of lawlessness in Chicago, New York, LA, all these other places. Um, it's like poverty is weaponized. And there's been several people that have warned about this. And to give you an idea, when people taught Marxism over in the former Soviet Union, they were appealing to these people who were so poor that they couldn't even hardly eat, and they weaponized them. Okay, that it's not too hard to weaponize people that are that poor. They weaponize the lower social classes to rise up and take things by force. And that's why Marxism uses a raised fist as a symbol. Some people are going to argue that they use the symbol of a hammer and sickle, but actually, before you get to the hammer and the sickle, a fist is holding those. And this is why when certain groups had a raised fist during the George Floyd riots, okay, that's who was influencing them also. These people were influencing them. And a lot of people didn't even know it. Marxist groups gave money to George Floyd protest organizations. I'm not going to say their names because you have to be careful saying that kind of stuff, because you can get more easily to get censored. But that I'm not joking on this. And it's also easily verifiable. Okay. The longer the poverty festers, especially when these people have seen the taste of how things used to be, the more poverty is weaponized or easy to weaponize. This has a lot of dangers the longer it's allowed to fester. People also, they can't really uh, live very well now. And having 3 or 4 jobs just to have a rent doesn't work anymore. Okay, these places in Asia and Europe, some of these places have what's called coffin houses, and it's basically the people are so poor and oppressed that they're renting a space the size of a closet as their apartment, and that's why it's called a coffin house. That came from Hong Kong, by the way. You can look up and find information on coffin houses, but it's basically like living in the space. Your apartment is the size of your bed. You don't even have a bathroom. You share the bathroom with everybody on your floor. And and it's also a place of darkness. And this is the future that's coming to this country if they don't find a way to rebuild. This is the future of Europe also. And you cannot support a family. You can't have a family or live a family lifestyle if you're so poor you can't even feed yourself. How are you going to feed a spouse and kids if you ain't got anything? And part of the scheme is they figured out that they don't need all this population. Some of these people will get like a government help, which is almost nothing. It won't be enough to live off of. And they'll have to do a side gig for, just selling themselves on the street with whatever they can on like a trade or selling, guitar lessons or some other crap to get a little bit of pocket money, and it won't be enough to live off of. Okay, other people have done research on this. There's other videos that you can find that talk about this. And when people are this oppressed, then you can't support a family, and then they indoctrinate them to be anti-family, or indoctrinate them to be social justice warriors because they're already stirred up and mad. So it doesn't take much to push them a little bit more. And this is why they need to find a way to fix some of these problems besides only money. A lot of it could be done with resources, non-cash resources. Okay, they could turn in. They could turn in. One of the real best ways they could deal with this is to create farming schools where people go and have room and board on the farm and learn how to farm and do other trades, in like government sponsored out in the Midwest. And they need to do that anyway because the large commercial farms run by big corporations, they're sick and they're resorting to turning to more and more chemicals and less humanity. It's becoming almost inhuman in how they run them just to get more money. And I could have whole videos to talk about that. And the way you got to fix that, okay, fix the farming problems, is to create more small scale ma and pa style farms where people, they don't need a lot of cash to live, where they could work it themselves, be self-sufficient, and then bring something to market. And you put those people into farming co-ops. In Utah in the 1800s, that's how the people survived. They band together in co-ops, cooperatives. Nobody had money, and it worked, and they built the state that way. And the Amish and the Mennonites kind of have a similar thing that's very similar to this. This is how they could feed and take care of the poor without having a welfare state, and where they could actually enlighten people and teach them to be good. But if they don't do it, the poverty's already being weaponized. Now, there's a story from several decades ago that the Secretary of Agriculture at the time, he met with the President of Russia, which was Khrushchev. The Secretary of Agriculture was Ezra Taft Benson. Not everyone listening to this is going to be LDS, but Ezra Taft Benson he was a big deal. He was a really smart guy. Anyway, when he met with them, there's a quote that Khrushchev told him that they were going to spoon feed our kids and grandkids communism, and that they would beg for it. Okay? The idea is, a lot of people don't really understand this, but it has to do with this weaponization of poverty. It also has to do with when a country is at the very top of the food chain, when it has everything going for it, the temptations of cheating and of having more than the next guy because of social class warfare, social ranking, become immensely dangerous. And okay, see, so when Khrushchev was telling President Benson this, people don't realize it's the ultimate trap because the top elites in the economy are guaranteed not to share. They're not going to want to, especially if the country's at the top. And so many people are tempted to think that they have to have more than somebody else, that it's creating this massive temptation thing. See? And while that's happening at the bottom, the poor classes, they're festering in anger. And this creates a situation where a country has unnatural enmity pointed towards it. This is how the wars in the Book of Mormon were started. A lot of people think it was only about religion. It wasn't. It was about, it's very, a lot of wars have to do with weaponization of poverty also. And the U.S. is in the ultimate trap right now. And this is why you have this quote also from Luke chapter 21, verse 20, which is, "But when you see Jerusalem surrounded by armies, you will know that her desolation is near." Also, Isaiah chapter 5, verse 7, "The instruments also of the churl are evil. He deviseth wicked ways and devices to destroy the poor with lying words, even when the needy speaketh right." See, the needy speaketh right. That's the weaponized poor right there. It's there. It's in Isaiah. There's other stuff in Jeremiah and Ezekiel that I could go over. But all of those verses from 6 to 14 of Isaiah chapter 5 are talking about right now the careless women and the welfare, the pleasant and rich fertility of the land and its wealth being stripped away to nothing. That's in there. Being replaced with empty cities and thorns and briars, with fields that are empty, and that it's caused by these liberal evil characters in verse 8. Okay, why would the churl and the fool want to destroy the poor? He thinks he's taking them captive, see, and he thinks he's taking their wealth to earn it, but the effect is that he's destroying them. That's all I've got for this video. Thanks.